Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday. It is 12:15. You know what that means. It's the Orlando Homeowner Show, and we've got a fantastic one. We just did about 6 minutes of prep for the call, and I'm so excited with our guest today. It's Susan West, the District VP for Fidelity National Title, over 22 offices. So she's going to be here with us right now to talk about what's happening in the market, sharing stats. We have some great articles, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back. Hey, one thing that's great about being live is we've already got a third co-host on here, Susan. I told you it might be happening. So this is Jack. Jack is my 4-year-old realtor in training. His teacher tested positive, so we were keeping him home for a little bit just in case. So Jack, can you sit tight and listen to Daddy talk here with Miss Susan?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So he's going to join us there. So Susan, thanks for joining us. We want to talk about what is the market doing. I always love chatting with you because I usually learn more than I give, and I hope you feel the same there. But our audience here today is the consumer, is people who are looking to buy, sell, invest, or actively doing it right now. And you've got a great insight on the title world. I'm looking at the real estate world, and I'd love to see how our stories are colliding and how they might be differentiating. So can you give us the quick CNN version of how is the market from the title world?
From the title world, I like to look at 2019, 2020, how they compared, and essentially, Rick, the start that we've gotten this year, right? We're just a little bit into the year, 20 days into the year. So if I take a look at, and how we measure ourselves is orders per day. So first of all, I want to say that when we closed out 2019 and we took that whole entire year and we looked out how many orders, new closing, that includes refinances and purchases, how many did we receive per day? The number was 48 per day, whole year of 2019. We just took it and looked at it as a whole year. 2020.
That is across the state, or was that, what are we looking
at? That's my
world,
world, which is mostly East Coast of Florida. However, we have an investor department and a builder department that visit the whole entire state, but the majority East Coast with some spackling over the entire state of Florida.
Okay, so we're pretty at least hyper local a little bit in terms of Florida stats. We're not looking at nationwide stats. We're looking at Florida stats.
No, not at all. Florida. Perfect. And again, my main focus is Central Florida and the East Coast. And to put it in perspective, there are 3 of me that work for Fidelity in the state of Florida. So take my operation times 3, and we could probably extrapolate those numbers out and make them larger. But just for me, for my world, 48 a day. But what really is relevant is we ended 2020 and we looked at, on average, 2020 per day orders were 61.
Wow.
So 48, right, 13 extra orders a day.
So yeah, so 61 divided by 48, we're looking at about a 27% growth.
Right, exactly.
Of new orders. Now you and I have talked in the past, and one thing that really stands out, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up right here and tell me if you agree. Let's see if we can pull it up. And if you're listening to this via podcast, you won't be able to see what we're talking about right now, but we essentially have a chart up of the Orlando Regional Realtors data. And however you listen to this, you can make sure that you can click the link and you'll see the PDF. But one thing I'm looking at right here is that number I just circled of 2.7%. With the interest rates, because title orders also come in through refinance. Is that where you're seeing a 27% bump? Was it in the refinance world, or are we also seeing it in the resale?
Well, let's talk about that. We see that in both. So if we take a look at our 2020 numbers, and now I'm going to talk about closings, right? Deals actually closed. 72% were resales and 28% were refinances. So clearly, 28%, 72%. If you look at 2019, 87% were refinances with 13 purchases rather, resale, with 13% being refinances. So definitely, 15% of my total closings up on refinances 2020. So we definitely saw more closings. When I run my numbers right now and look at just January, I'm tracking more like 35% refi closings.
Even higher.
Yeah, and that's just again a glimpse.
Yeah.
January, we're 20 days in,
Well,
not
yeah.
even 20 business days in, right? We're 11 business days in actually to 2020. So right now in this moment, and what's that about? We're closing some inventory. We do a lot of numbers don't lie. You can look at the math in different ways to see. So for instance, in 2020, my closing ratio was 78%. In 2019, my closing ratio was 84%. What do I attribute that to? 100% the refinances in the pipeline taking longer to close. I mean, we had refis, taking 90, 120 days to close because the lenders had so many because the rates were amazing and the lenders, as a rule, were closing the purchases first. So why do I think maybe I have more refis already closing in 11 days in January? Possibly is because I have that inventory built up from last year that's been in the pipeline that they kept pushing and pushing because they wanted to close purchases in December, and they pushed those refis to close in January. So yes, refis were up from 19 to 20. Total orders were up from 19 to 20. Closings were up from 19 to 20. Revenue was up. My revenue was up by 21%. Top line revenue, 20 over 19. My expenses were only up 13.5%. That's
Okay.
good news.
Right.
And
Well,
I want to talk,
so we've
I think
taken a
COVID,
lot of numbers out there, and we're talking to the average Joe, right? And
sorry.
so when we look, that's okay. When we look at the stats, this tells me that's all going to be valid. So what does this mean to your neighbor who you go jogging with tonight, and they say, "What's the market going to do? What's the outlook? What's the state of the market?" Break it down in layman's terms for me, in your
Well,
opinion.
I would say that we still have a strong market, that we definitely saw a build from 19 to 20. A focus on more refinances, but still a high level of increase and consistency in purchases and resales.
Okay.
We think rates are going to remain stable through spring of 2022. So amazing interest rates.
Why spring 2022? That's pretty specific. That's a year and a half away. What is about that number that you think that's the time?
I just think, listen, when I work for a Fortune 300 company, Rick, and our folks are talking to the folks, at the top.
Yep.
And that's what they're saying is they really believe these rates are going to last through spring of 2022.
Well, and I love that because last month when I did it, I pulled up the Federal Reserve and some of their, testimonies, some of their videos and press releases, and they said for the next 2 to 3 years, really until COVID's gone, they're going to keep the rates low to keep the economy moving, right?
Right.
Let's look at that a little bit and talk. And when we look at this stream here, because we see it's 2.7%. Which is the refi. And by the way, if you guys haven't refied right now and you're wondering if you should, here's going to be my blanket statement of yes, you should. Number one, if you have a 3.7% or higher and you can save a full 1%, it's going to make sense. Number two, you want to be able to stay in your house or keep your house for at least the next 3 to 4 years so you can recoup what that might be. If that's you, call a lender right off the bat. Use a local lender. I will endorse local lenders because there's a lot of moving parts, especially with the appraisers, which we're going to touch on. And if you need some endorsements for that, we can help you. But let's look at this real
Absolutely.
quick, Susan. 2.7%. Last year was 3.6%. So there's a full. So essentially, if you bought anytime last year, the exception of this last 6 months, you should probably really consider a refi. And no, you're
Right.
not crazy if you bought 9 months ago and you refi now. You're kind of crazy if you don't, right? The
Hmm.
year before,
You know what? I'll pause you there, Rick. You're crazy if
yep,
you don't inquire. You're crazy if you don't ask questions to the
if you don't
right
ask.
people. And 100%, you should be reaching out to Rick, reaching out to me, asking us from where we sit,
Yep.
who do we endorse? Because Rick's seeing it from one perspective and I'm seeing it from another perspective. So definitely ask the question.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat a dead horse. Thank you for that edit there because I don't want to call you crazy if you don't do something, but if you don't inquire. December 2018, 4.3. December 2017, 4, December 2016, 4.3. So we're seeing that 4 was the old normal. Now 3 is the normal. 2.7 is great. The other big thing I want to look at is inventory. Check this out. 4 years ago, 8,500 homes for sale, Susan, with 2,200 new contracts. That's about a 4-to-1 ratio of inventory to new contracts. Here we are at 7,500, a little bit less. It's about 3.5. It's not quite 4, but you still have 3.5.
Right.
2 years ago, 78 to 2,000, almost back at that 4-to-1 ratio again. So we're staying at 4-to-1. Let's look here of the past 2 years. Here we are again. Total inventory is 7,000 to 21. 48 to 25.
Wow.
Over the past 5 years, we've seen 7,500, 7,500, 7,500 with 2,000 homes. We have 30 or 40% less homes for sale with another 20% more contracts being written just last month.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to slow down?
Well, they project that inventory is going to remain low.
Yeah.
Interest rates are going to remain low. We're going to have a high demand, and there's going to be multiple offers on the listings. And I think when we look at that, when hiring a realtor such as Rick, what Rick knows is you're going to list it right. You're not going to list it too high, you're not going to list it too low. You're going to list it right, and then allow the market with the current rates, with the low inventory, to push the sales price where it needs to go with multiple offers. And then, as you were talking about a minute ago, Rick, we're going to talk about appraisers and how they're impacted by that, because they have to play a role when there's a loan involved. So I think it's really important for people to understand the inventory is low. It's going to remain low. So if you want to list, now's the time to list. If you want to buy, now is clearly the time to buy. And just sidebar, get your finances in order if you want to buy, and make sure that you're getting a pre-approval with a lender and you have all your statements, your bank statements, your tax returns, your pay stubs, all up to date, and you're constantly ready for the next one to turn it in, because the person with their finances in order and the approval and the right offer
are going to win the multiple offers.
Right.
Well, and we're going to touch on that from an article that Inman wrote out. Real quick, we'll pause for some audience. Jason, thanks for jumping on. Richard McKay, thanks for jumping on. Georgette, I see you're waving your hand. So if you have a question or if you're just saying hello, either way, type in anything in the comments, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, we'll see it. So type in the comments there. And let's take a look here to this Inman article. And again, I'm going to have this link attached. You do have to be a subscriber for Inman, so you're not going to get everything, but you'll get a preview. But Inman is a real estate publisher, and they talk about the entire U.S., so this is nationwide, industry-wide. And they have some predictions of what buyers and sellers should prepare for in the coming year. I read it. I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to get your take. And we've got about 15 minutes to go through the rest of this, so we're not going to deep dive yet. Let's really keep it high level. I think we've beat this with a dead horse. Low inventory, high demand, multiple offers. You would agree with Inman there. And whether you and I agree or not, the proof's in the writing. We saw it there, right? We saw 40% less inventory than just last year's and consistently, so it's not a fluke. Taylor, what's up? He says, Taylor Young from Urban Young. He says, power couple there. So there's a shout out there. All right, so we're good there. The next one, the market won't pay top dollar for overpriced dated homes. What they're saying now is that people who are buying a house, they are paying for, and they're willing to pay more for that turnkey updated home as opposed to the one that needs, even if it's just aesthetic work, but the carpet, the wallpaper, the fixtures, the countertops, the kitchen, that they're not going to pay for it, and they'd rather pay more money and finance the already updated home. Thoughts on that?
That's true. That's true. And I believe that, again, people want to see what they want. We've had a lot of time, right, this past year. And I believe that this is part of what drives this up. People have had a lot of time at home, a lot of time to think about what they really want. So when they've made a decision that they're going to buy, they're looking for something very, very specific. And they'd rather buy that specific than have to spend more time to create it. However, knowing that fact, I would say with your buyers, Rick, with anybody that's listening, it's really important for them to understand the lending products and to partner with lenders. And there are some amazing renovation loans out there where your buyer can buy the home and renovate at the same time and get the money from the lender that they're borrowing to purchase from. They can simultaneously get the money to renovate. And I believe that that's, again, remember what we said a few minutes ago, the market, there's a limited inventory. So how do we expand the inventory is by getting buyers that are willing to go against the norm, go against what we see, which is they don't want to buy dated homes and they don't want to buy overpriced, but look at some dated homes, and you empower them, Rick, through understanding the lending programs with the tools of the renovation. It's 100%.
Well, I love that. It's a 203K loan, right? So inquire about that 203K loan, and then what that does. My thought is, if you can go get money for 2.7%, why wouldn't you be okay to pay for and finance that kitchen as opposed to after the fact stroking a $40,000 check? You're going for 2.7. No, I want this rolled into my loan. I want the pool already done, and let's just do that. So if you are thinking about listing your house and you're thinking about what is the ROI, call me, because my goal for all of my sellers, if you are strictly updating your house to sell it, then a dollar in and a dollar out makes no sense. That's just putting stress in your world. A dollar in for $2 out is what we're looking for. And we've got a very good track record of going, don't do this, but do these, and you will maximize your return, your net.
Right.
So that's going to be important to know, what should you do if you're thinking about selling. So if that's a question, make sure you comment or just give us a shout out there. All right, let's keep going. We've got the top 7. So number 3, I feel like David Letterman. Can I throw the pencil at the camera afterward? All right, new investor opportunities are overpriced. I'll put it up here. And outdated homes. So the investor market, they look for a certain cap rate. They look for a certain cash on cash. And it says new investor opportunities are overpriced. What are your thoughts on that, talking to the investors? Is now a good time to invest, or is this coming year a good time to invest?
Honestly, I need you to know, Rick, that when we ended, we came into 2020 pretty hot. It was pretty aggressive. We get to March. We had investors, some of the investors that we do business with, buying like between 10 and 15 homes a day. This was March 2020.
Wow.
We get to the end of March 2020, and when I tell you they stopped on a dime, they stopped buying because of COVID, because of the uncertainty, because of a lot of things.
Sure.
Right. Okay. So investors started buying again in November, and now they are ramping up and buying more. So 100% the investors are buying. 100% they are buying the outdated homes, and we are seeing assignments where an investor's finding a home and assigning it to another buyer. So the investor's finding the home, finding the buyer, finding the seller in the home, finding another buyer. Exactly. And they're doing some real matchmaking with assignments here now. But we have seen that market getting very, very rambunctious. The volume's up again. We took literally, because we're a Fortune 300 company, we had an investor department of about 7 people. And when things dropped in the end of March, we took each one of our investor personnel and we put them in another branch where things were good, because we were crazy busy, as I just told you with the stats. We just pulled our entire investor department back. They're all under the same roof again, and they're working on investor business. So yes, and we also see, Rick, more individuals investing than we've seen before. People just, again, understanding that, hey, maybe I could invest in one home and see how that works for me. So we see more individual investors doing one home at a time, and maybe their goals are in 2021 to invest in one property. And some are doing the buy and fix and hold, which means rent it, and some are doing the buy and fix and sell. And I will tell you that I believe that investing is always, it doesn't really matter what the market is. You get to choose at the end of the renovations that you're doing, am I renting that out as an investor, or am I going to sell that as an investor? So there's always those two options, and that decision doesn't always have to be made in the beginning. But yes, investors, from large investors to small.
When I experienced this just yesterday, I had an investor call me. He's got a home he's owned for 30 years, a duplex he's owned for 25 years. He's looking to sell it to be able to then take it and 1031 exchange it to an Airbnb that'll be a vacation rental / retirement home in the next 5 years. I shared with him, I said, you know what, I would be interested in buying this from you. I would give you fair market value, right? There'd be some fees reduced because it would be an off-market property. But I gave him the comps. And mainly I was offering that as a solution to that 1031 timeline game, which, by
Right.
the way, February 10th, we're having a 1031 conversation. February is the investor month, by the way. So all of our shows are going to be talking to flippers, wholesalers, 1031ers, buy and holders. It's going to be investment month. Well, and he said, well, Rick, no offense, but you'd probably want a deal. And in this market, I want to get top dollar, and you might not want to pay it. And my response was, I can give you top dollar and still feel strong of the growth that's going to happen, and that I'm not going to be overpaying because I don't see the bubble happening, especially in that investor market there. We've got 10
Isn't
minutes.
that great, Rick, that you said that, though? I want to make sure everybody heard that. You feel as an investor, you can pay top dollar because there'll be more appreciation. So your money and your earnings are down the road, you're not necessarily now. And that changes with different markets, whether you're, paying less now to get your gain now, or, whether you're renovating to get your gain, or whether you're realizing that time and appreciation will create a gain for you. And 1031 exchange, big advocate for conversation about that.
Well, you've got a department in there, which we can talk about another time as well, because it's important that the 1031 exchange companies and the title companies are very cohesive. So I think you've got someone with Fidelity as well. So different conversation, but maybe tune in on February 10th so we can learn more about that.
Perfect.
All right, let's keep going because we've got about 10 minutes left. Transactions will become increasingly accelerated. Said it wasn't too long ago that we saw delays with COVID, working from home. Showing days of 20 plus homes have dwindled. So essentially buyers aren't shopping as long as they were, and the buyer's going to be a lot more serious. And I think you just mentioned to it a little bit. We kind of know what this pandemic is. We know how to protect ourselves, whether people choose to do it or not. We know that the real estate market has been unaffected by it so far, and I'll just knock on wood there. Is there any other reason besides now we kind of know as a reason why things are still going to move faster than they even did in 2020?
Well, I think we've all gotten better at how we do things, right? Because we had to pivot and make some real changes, but it was an aggressive year, Rick. So we had to move fast last year, even with all the changes. But I believe the acceleration comes from what we've already spoken about, which is the multiple offers. And that's why preparation as a buyer is going to be key. Now, interest rates staying low, people continuing to refinance. As you pointed out, people could have purchased a year ago and they're refinancing now, right? People could have purchased 9 months ago and they're refinancing now. So we're refinancing, lenders are refinancing, and we're closing people that bought 9 months ago. With that being said, the volume's not changing. We're looking for an aggressive year. I think where the acceleration we're talking about is going to be your cash buyers, those getting to the closing table much quicker, but also the acceleration in the offer and being prepared with your finances to get the offer, and lack of a better way to say it, seal the deal. Now, what the jury is out on is how quickly the lenders will be able to move with the inventory that they have to push through to get from to closing. But I'm telling you, buyers that are listening, public that's listening, the best favor you can do for yourself is to make sure your finances are in order. And Rick, we talked about this. What about your self-employed person? What should they be doing right now?
Yeah, so actually I've got a neighbor and a friend who's a self-employed, and with the new president becomes new taxes, and he's a little bit unknown. So he's a little bit of that wary of going, do I claim more? Do I claim less? Because his thought process was it's likely that the taxes would become more expensive given the leadership. And so he'd rather claim them on 2020 to have a less of a tax liability versus defer it with cash. So at the end of the day, you've got to understand that what you report on your taxes is your buying purchase power. So
Right.
what you made or what you really made versus what you claim, and get with a CPA. And I'm going to encourage you guys not to beat the system. Yet there is some tax advantages you guys can do that can have tax savings just get with a CPA so you can say, what is my taxable earned income? Because that is what the lenders will use in terms of giving you your purchase power. So
It's a double-edged sword, right, Rick? You're reducing your taxable income to pay less taxes. However, when you reduce your taxable income, you're potentially reducing your purchasing power because the lender's looking at your tax returns in order to approve you,
including your investment power. So you could be losing money by not gaining that opportunity that you could have otherwise got.
So a professional in that arena is really important. But also, you procrastinators out there, don't procrastinate this year. Just get it done. This is not the year, if you're thinking of purchasing real estate, to put your taxes off and file for extensions. And again, I say that, but make sure you're checking with your CPA and make sure you're checking with the lender you're going to use to get exactly what they're going to need from you. If they're going to need current tax returns, then you better get current with your tax returns, because as we said, multiple offers, low inventory, have your financial ducks in a row.
And that's been you've planted that flag and you've hit that home. So that's, if we could name this, what you're passionate about, it's, get your ducks in a row. So when you see a deal, you can buy it, right?
Right.
So when you see an opportunity, you can go buy it. All right, home stretch, here we go. Appraised values may become increasingly challenging. We saw this a little bit back in the 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 era, when prices were going up 10 to 20% a year, appraisals weren't catching up with it. They're expecting that we're going to see that a little bit again, that the demand will outpace the appraisals, and we will see some appraisal challenges. What are your thoughts?
I think that we have to be prepared. We have to understand that just because there's low inventory and multiple offers end up typically with increased offers, right? I'll pay 5,000 more, I'll pay more, I'll pay more. Yep. That the appraisers don't have to, and quite frankly, in some instances, not to be offensive, should not follow that. Just because a buyer's willing, and yes, what's the value of something, what someone's willing to pay? Yes, to a certain extent, but the appraisers, sometimes we're not happy with the appraisers in the way that they value properties, but as a rule, an appraiser isn't necessarily going to follow increased offers with the value of the home. So you have to be prepared, I think, Rick, with conversations with your seller. This buyer's made this offer, but the buyer's clear that if it doesn't appraise, the buyer's going with appraised value. Seller, what are your thoughts? Will you accept or what? So there just has to be education and conversation from the real estate professional, preparing the buyer and the seller for the conversation. If the appraisal doesn't come through, who's budging, right? Well, we don't need a standoff.
Let's look at that real quick, because I had this just happen, and when I price a home, I say this is the low end, this is the high end, expect somewhere in the middle, right? Because I am not a fortune teller. I don't know what buyer is going to walk in at what motivation. Right. Yet we know that offers are coming in, specifically when it's multiple offers, typically over here if the house is in good condition. When I say over here on the higher side, what I just experienced is we had a home and I was seeing ranges anywhere from about 235 to 255, right? And they comp to be about 240 to probably 250-ish. And that was the range that when we listed the house at 250, I said, let's expect to get something in the 240s. And that was the game plan. Well, 72 hours later and 3 hours later, we got an offer for 252. That sounds great. So a buyer was willing to pay outside of what we saw as that market value. That's great. Let's fast forward a little bit. The appraiser, they came up with the same numbers we did. It was no different. The difference was they have to give you a specific number for lending. I gave a range. Right. Well, their specific number they came back with, Susan, was 245. And so I'm seeing 245, and I call this appraiser. I'm going, I don't disagree with your numbers. We seem to be spot on. I'm just curious, knowing that we had a 252 contract and knowing that you had 3 comps that supported 248, why you didn't go 248. And she said, when it's not within range, she will default to the closest one and or the median, both of which were 245.
Right.
So a hypothetical, and this is just, not every appraiser is doing this. I'm not saying this is the absolute, yet this was my experience just yesterday. I said, hypothetically, if the contract, Susan, was 248, which was within your range, would you have still gone to the median? And she says, usually if it's within range, I will at least honor that because I don't feel that they're overpaying, they're just paying top dollar. If they're overpaying, I default it to range. So
Right.
by hindsight 2020, to you listers out there, even if you're a realtor out there, taking the highest offer with appraisal contingency might not be as strong as taking one that we actually agree with, or ask if they'll waive that appraisal, or if appraisal comes in, buyer's willing to pay X number above. These are some of those terms you can do ahead of time. So if you're buying and you're willing to pay above appraised value, think about that as well. But that was the real life experience, and it didn't surprise me. When I saw 252 in the contract, I was like, woohoo! When I saw 245, I was like, but I don't disagree. I see it. I just wish we had gone that 248. At the end
Right.
of the day, the
Absolutely.
seller's still very happy. He still got more money than he thought he was going to get at 245. So it's still a win-win. Yet that's absolutely true. Is the appraiser is going to be a little more, tortoise and the hare. They're going to be the tortoise. The buyer's going to be the hares, and it's going to go slow there. So, all right. Final thought was, let's get back to it. Overcrowded and overvalued markets. Everyone's been on the move to certain geographical areas. They say specifically Florida is running up new residents. So we look at nationwide stats. We hear a lot of Manhattan's taking a hit, San Francisco's taking a hit, Seattle's taking a hit, because people now are working from home. They don't have to be, a walking distance. Yet everyone seems to be coming to Florida. So
Love it.
yeah, they're coming here. And that's why I still feel it's strong. Some of my friends make fun of me of going, it's a seller's market and a buyer's market. Well, that's convenient, Mr. Realtor. It's just true. It's a seller's market because the values you're getting now are great. Now, if you hold on to it, I think you'll get more values next year, but you have the motivation of what? Or could you take that and reinvest it like my investor is to a vacation home in Hilton Head? So this has been awesome. We've been at 31 minutes. We're on borrowed time right now. If you liked what you heard, make sure you like or subscribe to whatever you're listening to this. If you're watching after the fact or on podcast, we'd love to hear your comments, your feedback. If you have specific questions or contents for shows, then please do that as well. Susan, any final thoughts or what people could do to follow you or stay in touch with you?
My final thought is, well, first of all, I can always be reached at susan.west at fnf.com, 407-312-6590. My final thought would be, Rick, you said it the best when you said, this isn't an absolute, it's merely my experience. Continue, viewers, to pay attention to the people that are working in this, doing this every day. And if you stick with professionals like Rick and myself, it may be something new to us, but it won't be nearly as new to us as it is to you, and
Right.
we can walk you through it. So this is not an absolute today. This is our experience, and I just am honored to be sharing this time with you, Rick. Thank you for inviting
Which is
me.
why we're doing it once a month, because next month we might have some new trends that point us in a different direction. So, and
Perfect.
Susan, I love talking with you, so I'll probably have you back as a guest if it's good for you. We'll
Love
just bring
it.
you on here for some market updates. Until then, guys, we'll see you next Wednesday and every Wednesday for the Orlando Homeowner Show. Thanks for jumping on, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Rick.